So March 2014, we transitioned into enforcement actions, and we'll talk a little bit about some actions, activities that we're tracking in regards to the enforcement. Again, a review, of course, traceability regulation focused on livestock that move interstate, certain classes of animals, cattle. It must be officially identified and be accompanying with a movement document, most commonly the Interstate Certificate of Veterinary Inspection. So this is a question for you all. What was one of the more significant regulatory changes established through the publication of the ADT or the traceability regulation? Not a right or wrong answer, but from your perspective, one of the Tonys back there, what do you think? Off the cuff. What, from a regulatory text perspective in the regulation, what was one of the more beneficial changes that you think we've made in advancing traceability, if any? Dr. Forshee? Fraser, you've always got some words of wisdom. What's your opinion? What's your response to this question?
What I was going to say is probably already in the rule, but it became more clear in that rule. For interstate movement, that these animals are going to have to be identified, and that we can begin to trace those things through the CBI process.
Very good. And maybe we've already forgotten. Prior to Part 86, we could move livestock, cattle, breeding cattle, from one farm or ranch or from a market back to a farm or ranch interstate on a back tag. How good is back tags 24 days after the animal was sold and moved on a back tag? Not so much. We still recognize back tags for certain movements in lieu of official ID, but back tags are not official. To me, that was one of the real enhancements that we made in the publication of Part 86. I think there was a lot of others, but I think that's one that we don't recognize often enough, that we did establish more permanency on official identification through that regulation. So another question for you all. Yeah, it's a quiz. You're right. What's one of the more significant, beneficial administrative changes we've made the last 2, 3, 4 years? And not just one, but in your opinion, Paul. From the administration. Yeah, I know, but you should have had coffee by now. Well, the state veterinarians get a lot of credit for a lot of the good things we've done, I think. So, anybody want to... That'd be nice. That'd be good. We did. Sonny's helping me a lot, so thank you very much. Administered by the states. The states take the lead on animal ID. I wrote down 3 things that came to my mind that we've really significantly made a change in. We've increased the volume of records searchable in data systems. We've increased the records of searchable records in databases. And we've increased the volume of records in searchable database systems. You want my opinion? I think this is one of the greatest things, most significant things we've done well in advancing traceability. This is an example of from Colorado, but it's an example that would be pertinent to many other states in a similar fashion. Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, this is 1 year's storage of import-export certificates, about 2010 or 11. 1 year's worth. And this was the storage system in 2010 or 11. So When we need to find records, what's the solution? Sitting down and pawing through the boxes. So that's an illustration that I think many states had as far as their solution for traceability prior to the beginning of ADT. In ADT, we prioritized this activity immensely in moving data to electronic storage systems. And as a result, Colorado, for example, now has 100% of the ICBIs electronically stored on data information systems. Nebraska, Oregon, Oklahoma, Washington, Wisconsin maybe, I think, all got stories, examples of how they've moved paper-based records into electronic media. Didn't happen by itself. There was a sincere effort and a plan, and USDA, through cooperative agreement funding, helped fund some of that effort. So again, the key to successful traceability is the timely retrieval of complete and accurate information. I think we've made great progress in this area. We've got some documentation to back up our progress. ADT is a performance-based program. We focus on the time to retrieve records of information associated with traceability. We track certain activities to document progress and identify gaps. The original performance measures were established by the 2010 Traceability Working Group that provided input to the regulation. The primary focus was on the administration of official identification and ICBI records. We measure the amount of time that it takes to answer certain questions that are posed by those traceability activities. We call them traceability performance measures. Our first comparison, or our first mark, was the national baselines established in 2014, and then we did our first point of comparison to those national baselines in 2015. The four key questions are very simple, but they're all related to the interstate movement of animals. In what state was an imported animal officially identified? Where in the state was the animal officially identified? From what state was an animal shipped? If it was imported to your state, where did it come from? And if it left your state, from what premises or location was the animal shipped from? There could be a ton of other questions, but these are four key activities that the working group back in 2010 identified. The first year, we didn't do activity 1 because we were working primarily with noose tags, and the noose tags have the answer on the tag. So if you got the tag number, you got the answer. But for each performance activity or measurement, there's really two measurements. What percent of the time did you find the information? And how long did it take? So for activity number 2, where was the animal tagged? And it's all about keeping distribution records, tag records of tags applied or tag distribution records. Only 69% of the time could folks at the state level, state offices and our animal ID coordinators at the federal level help also, could we find the answer? 69% of the time. Sometimes we just gave up. It might have been in that box, but we couldn't spend any more time finding it. The first year comparison, we increased from 69% to 88%. And we intentionally used older records when we did the baseline. They were done prior to the implementation of ADT. So some of it was just a better record-keeping system and newer records. But you saw the example of the older paper-based method and what more states are using today. The other measurement, of course, is how long did it take. We went from 88 hours, and we dropped that down to 35 hours. I think there's an indication that why couldn't we do it even quicker? Well, as we get more records stored electronically, it might get less, but that's a pretty significant drop. But I'll give most of the credit to moving the records from the boxes to the information system. And we can still make some progress in that regards.
Is that real time or business hours? Or?
That's lapse time. When they were given the test number, working it in with their other priorities, when they found the information, if it sat on their desk for a day before they could get to it, that was 24 hours lapse time. Activity number 3 increased from 58% of the time to 84% of the time. We found, retrieved the information, and we decreased from 138 hours to 42 hours. Activity number 4, 76% of the time, which was pretty high back then in comparison to some of the others, to 88% of the time, but we improved significantly from 264 hours to 46 hours. Now, I think we want to keep these in perspective. Would we take these to court and debate whether it's 46 hours or 55 hours? No. But it's within the reason of expectation what we were relying on, because we're still working on statistics that we don't want to spend our lives doing test exercises, so there's still a few hundred records that we've examined, but these are the results from those activities. We're doing the same thing for this cooperative agreement period that ended the end of March, so we'll have our second year comparison summarized in the very near future. For those of you that are directly involved, we're looking at obtaining your performance measures through the person, ADODR, the person responsible for your cooperative agreement, back to staff by the middle of May. Again, for the states and our folks at the federal level that are involved with the continued administration of the test exercises, we are advancing the implementation or the processing of traceability performance measures by using Emergency Management Response System 2 to administer the trace exercises. We'll be able to utilize real trace exercises more efficiently, but we're moving away from a spreadsheet that we attach to emails and distribute quarterly. We'll be able to use a centralized web-based system in the future, and we're wanting to make that move rather immediately. So we'll have some training webinars this month, early next month, to make that transition in the process. Just a point of reference that we're continuing those performance measures as a way to document progress, and I think it documents the significant efforts we've had at the state and federal level to move records to electronic storage. Moving on, a few comments on monitoring and compliance. I mentioned earlier we phased from education and communication only to the enforcement phase in March 2014. I want to reemphasize repeat offenders. We've educated, we've communicated to a guy, and if he continues to violate the regulation, it's time to penalize the person, so there's an indication that we are serious about the enforcement. We established and published the monitoring and compliance document, which again helped provide information to the industry that we're taking this fairly serious, but it also gave us the opportunity for our folks to look at enforcement and compliance actions uniformly across the entire country. Again, our primary focus on enforcement was official identification and the administration of ICVIs. We defined the ICVI in the regulation, what's required, and we want accredited veterinarians to fill out or complete the certificates accordingly. And you'll see that we've got quite a few actions taken on the administration of ICVIs. for our own value internally, as much as anything, we look at what activities we've supported from the enforcement across the entire country. The first category is consultation. So Michael, we've talked to you 3 times now that this is what you got to do to move those animals. It's pretty simple. You put a tag in them, official ID tag. We find out and that you've violated the regulation, but you're such a nice guy, we're going to consult with you again just to make darn sure that you understand. And so the consultation is not just mere communication again. It's more, we know, we want to make sure you understand the requirement, because we have evidence that you didn't tag those animals. So we're giving you another chance. After that consultation effort, if you do it again, you get a letter of information with a formal documentation that you violated the regulation. And then if you do it again, we're turning the case over to investigative and enforcement services. I don't have the summary of the full year that just ended, but this is April through December 2015. You can see the number of consultations, the letter of information, and the cases initiated with IES. Won't go through all of those in detail, but it indicates that we've had over 1,200 consultations, almost 1,700 letters of information, and initiated 60 cases with IES. That was in 3 quarters, so the annual totals would be a little bit greater. I will offer acknowledgement that we want to re-energize our oversight, our inspection of slaughter plants. I think this is one of the things that we probably weren't able to do in 2015 because some of our AIC coordinators were directly involved with HIPATH, and some of those priorities got sat on for a little bit, so we need to get back into those plants. We might find more letters to slaughter plants and cases in the near future, but we also have to realize that we're working through FSIS in that regards as well. Just a few comments on official ear tags or official identification. Please keep in mind that we define those by species. Every species is a little bit different. Equine official numbering systems is different than official numbering systems for cattle and bison. States must accept all methods of official ID. Michigan, while Michigan is electronic ID, for moving cattle into Michigan, all methods must be accepted. They then, once the animals are in Michigan, their state regulation applies. And then there's the clause about the shipping and receiving state may accept other methods of ID. In some of the brand states, maybe you've accepted brands, but in most cases the official ear tag was also put in as a secondary method of ID. But the states have worked out some of those agreements quite well. So another question, if I may. Go for it. So you got a 6-month-old dairy heifer, or a group of them, and they're identified with 900 series tags. Are those tags official today or not? The heifers are 6 months old. No, very good. So we now have the opportunity to examine the requirements that were put up to transition into that requirement. You know, if the animal was 3 years old, you don't know when was the animal tagged 6 months ago or 2.5 years ago. Well, those younger animals now need the 840 tags and American ID and USA prefix tags. We have the ability to start, I don't want to say hard enforcement, but making sure that producers understand they need to have those tags used up and transitioning to tags that meet our current requirements, either a noose numbering system, national uniform ear tagging system where the state prefix is the leading spaces, or the 840 number. Wasn't able to get an update on the use of silver and brucellosis tags for this year, but in essence, I think we're looking at about 10 million per year, and that's based on tags that were shipped out of the warehouse in Kansas City because we don't have complete records of when they were put in animals. To me, very much of interest is the increase over the years that we've had in the 840 numbering system. This is kind of a natural growth because we really haven't done a campaign, if you will, on the use of 840 tags. Of interest to me, and I think it'll be of importance to many of you, is probably 90-95% of the 840 tags are electronic tags. So this is a good indication that we are advancing extremely well with electronic identification. So as I close, just a reminder what our priorities are. While we move to enforcement, educating stakeholders about the rule remains a priority. Identifying animals, in particular cattle, using official ID is a priority. Collecting animal movement information. The proper administration of ICBIs is what we continue to prioritize. And I say these items because we're still working on the priorities that we established several years ago. We want to continue to do this part of ADT extremely well so we can make advancement. Increase the volume of searchable records and continue to work on compliance of the regulation. And another activity that I think is very important and very appropriate for USDA to fund to the degree possible is the support to advance ID technology. We've established some UHF, ultra-high frequency identification projects, and there'll be a report on that later today, but those are, I think, very exciting and futuristic about animal identification.